Subway has teamed up with Live Nation to bring you great food and great music for a great value. Right now, buy a Subway $5 footlong and get a Live Nation concert ticket for $5 to participating Live Nation shows like Nickelback, The Fray, and Crew Fest 2. Ticket price does not include fees. See store for details. Subway. Eat fresh. Eat fresh. The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't
The
care.
BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. Going a little Hollywood for you today. Our friend Neal Brennan, director of a hit movie that hasn't been a hit movie yet because it hasn't been released, but you also know him as the co-creator of Chappelle Show and partly responsible, even half responsible for Half Baked.
Yes, yes.
The greatest stoner movie of the 90s and some other stuff. And now he's here on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. What's happening?
What is this called?
This is called what's called a podcast.
No, but what is the Subway Fresh Take?
They sponsor the podcast. So you're on the Subway Fresh Take
They provide
Hotline.
Sandwiches? Like, what do they?
Yeah,
Promotional consideration?
Yeah, I got some free sandwiches out of it.
And do they have to twist your arm, or are you just?
No, I love having Subway as my sponsor.
Great
So-
meats that I do.
So on August 14th, your movie The Goods premieres.
Yeah.
And let's talk about that first. Screw it.
I would love to.
Now, you've been working on this movie the last 2 years. It stars Jeremy Piven.
Yes.
You're doing it with the Farrell McKay Company that gave us one of my favorite shows of the last couple of years, Eastbound and Down. Why should I not be excited for this movie?
There's really no reason not to be excited. If you like good, hard, dirty jokes,
Yeah.
there's about 25 dirty jokes.
I love good, hard, dirty jokes.
I mean, like good, hard, dirty, where you're just like, wow,
yeah.
that is dirty.
Perfect.
But it's never, I mean, I try to shoot it like in a way that it doesn't feel, rapey. Where it looks crisp. And the cast is like Piven, Ed Helms from The Hangover, the guy who lost his tooth.
Yeah.
Ken Jeong from The Hangover, the guy with the Asian gangster.
So you kind of lucked out a little bit that The Hangover was such a big success. Because, I didn't really know who Ed Helms was before I saw Hangover because I'm not an Office guy.
Right. I mean, you kind of need some kind of cultural tailwind with these things. Like, you got to get lucky. We shot before The Hangover.
Really?
And the way, and then we had a release in April, and then they moved the Soloist to our date. Paramount did. So then we were like, well, then we want to move to the summer. So we were supposed to come out before The Hangover, then the whatever. So
does that help or hurt? I feel like it helps because there hasn't been.
It absolutely helps because now people go, oh, the people from The Hangover, whereas before it would have just been Piven to sort of carry it in terms of notoriety. Also, Farrell is in the movie.
Ooh.
And is Will Ferrell is in the movie, not Colin, and is like kills, like it's like batting practice.
Yeah, he could just show up like
yeah. I mean, people always say like, "What's Will like?" And what I always say is, first of all, he's way nicer than me, way nicer, and he's also he's off camera, he's no funnier than anyone you know, and then on camera, he's funnier than everyone you know.
He's got the switch.
Yeah, it's this off camera. You think he's doing a bit about being a nice guy, and then you yell action. And it's just like it's crazy.
You know what? He's kind of like that on talk shows because he's very reserved on talk shows, and you're kind of waiting for him to
pants off, and it's like, and then he's dressed like a leprechaun or whatever.
I think it'd be a weird guy to be married to. So he'd just be hanging out on TV, and then he'd come back like dressed like Gavin McLeod in the Love Boat.
He used to dress up every Friday at SNL. He would dress up as like this character whose name I can't remember, but he would wear like an ascot. and everyone just had to sort of address him as that guy.
So Piven is the lead of this movie.
Indeed.
They're, not the greatest reputation for easy to work with in Hollywood. How was your experience with him?
My experience could not have been better.
Really?
He was such a, does he have a reputation for not being good to work with or not being good to sleep with?
I think it might even be both. I'm not sure.
Because working with, he couldn't have been like, he was excellent. Like, he's a real pro. Like, he really, he's not great with, like, memorization, right? So he has to study the lines endlessly and doggedly, and he was such a big Chappelle Show fan and such a big fan of Talladega Nights and Anchorman and all that stuff that Adam McKay wrote and directed, that he was very sort of deferential to me and Adam in terms of direction. He was like, he wanted to know what we had to say.
Big moment in his career too, because this is a lead of a
it's a big moment
comedy.
in my career and a big moment in his career. I mean, that's the thing is, you can't pretend it's not.
Yeah.
Like, I can't sit here and go like, well, we'll see what happens. No, this is a giant fork in my life. Like, and it's up to the listeners of the Subway podcast.
The Subway Fresh Take Hotline podcast?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah. No, it's it really is like a giant fork. Like, it will determine the next 10 to 15 years of my life, depending on how well it does.
And exactly how many rehab stints you might have, how many women you might go through. Yeah.
How do I play this? So, because you bring up Half Baked, when me and Chappelle wrote that, we were 23, right?
Yeah.
So we do it, and the script, as much as people like the movie, I'm not really a fan of it. Chappelle's not a fan of it. The script I was a fan of. It was kind of different and more... the Half Baked took on like this sort of plastic-looking goofiness that neither me and Dave intended.
Yeah.
And so, and what people don't realize is that it did not do well at the box office because we opened in January of 2008, and we opened against the movies that were sort of newly released at that point were
not 2008.
Good Will Hunting.
No, 1998, right?
1998, yeah.
Yeah.
Good Will Hunting, GoldenEye, and wait for it, Titanic.
Oh.
In its third week. So we got crushed. And we me and Chappelle kind of got put on the bench in show business.
You know what's interesting about Half Baked, though? Like, where you released it, you were a little like an outlier, the Gladwell term for when something hits at the right time, because you were the outlier of, that was right around the time when cable exploded and you had all these movie channels and things were on over and over again. Because I know Boogie Nights was like that too for me.
It was more DVD. It was DVD was actually.
DVD, that I think 97 was the first year that people really started buying DVDs. You had the combo of the cable and the DVD, and then it took on this other life.
Yeah, it took on a big life with DVD because obviously people watch it in groups, and
so I would consider it a success now. As weird as it sounds.
Yeah, but Hollywood doesn't. DVD success does not count.
But I think for anybody under 30 by 1999 who had a DVD player who was remotely fun to be with, probably had Half Baked. Yeah.
Absolutely. But again, Hollywood doesn't, that means nothing. It just does not count. But now having said that, when Chappelle Show came out, like on the DVD, the original release was a picture of Chappelle and Brewer, and then on the sleeve of the DVD, on like the spine, was a picture of Brewer. Now, as the co-writer of the movie, Dave, being the co-writer with me, and the star of the movie, it was a bit of an insult that Brewer's on the spine. All right, so then Chappelle Show comes out, big hit. They re-release it with just Dave on the cover, and Brewer and Harlan sort of receding in the background, and Dave on the spine.
Talk about I sound like a sideline reporter. You and Dave, I'm going to start that question again. You and Dave knew each other since you were like, what, 14?
Since we were 17, yeah.
17, because you were both
we
like...
met, I was going to NYU Film School, and my brother is a comedian named Kevin Brennan, so I was hanging out at comedy clubs, and I started working the door at a comedy club in New York called the Boston Comedy Club. And the only other young dudes were that guy Jay Moore, who's like a comedian actor guy who was in Jerry Maguire, and Chappelle. So we were all like around the same. But so me and Dave hit it off, like sort of create, comedically and just culturally, like the same movies, like the same books and stuff. And so we started just kind of hanging out and writing. I would never really write. We didn't really write anything together. We wrote a couple jokes together prior to that, and then in 90, we met in 91, and then in 97 we wrote Half Baked, and that came about because he had a meeting at Universal, and they said, "Do you have any ideas?" And he was like, "Yeah, I have this weed idea for a weed movie," and he goes, "And I'm writing it with my friend Neal." Now, meanwhile, we'd never talked about it. So then he calls me the minute he gets out of the meeting. He goes, "Hey, if Universal calls you, tell them we're writing a weed movie." So it was like a Brady Bunch episode where it was like, "Yeah, we're writing a weed movie." They're like, "When can you pitch it?" "In a month. We can pitch it in a month." And then we, of course, because we're 23 and comedians, we waited until the night before we had to pitch it to actually come up with what we were going to pitch.
I mean, the most important thing was the title. It's a great title. When did you come up with that?
That was Brewer's title, actually.
Oh, nice title.
Yes, thank you.
Strong. Yeah. I like titles that work as a title, but also kind of tell you what it's about. Those are the best kind of titles.
Again, the title works, but it almost describes the way like critics received it.
So maybe not a good title.
Yeah, like I believe CNN said that Dave's career was over, and the New York Times said that Brewer and Chappelle should be ashamed of themselves. Now, I don't know if you knew this. Pauline Kael's review in the New York Times of Caddyshack, or it was either Caddyshack or Meatballs, was, "I don't know who this Bill Murray is, but I would like to stay as far away from him as possible." I believe that was for either Meatballs or Caddyshack. You
gotta Google Rex Reed's review of Funny People. It's the angriest, most scathing review I've ever read in my life of anything. Yeah, for some reason, he reacted to this like the Taliban made it.
He rejected it like a kidney?
The level of vitriol.
That's awesome. I love it.
The level of vitriol.
I don't know what they did to you, but what did you expect?
Yeah. When Chappelle, I vaguely remember reading a feature in like 94 or 93 in New York Magazine about an African-American comedian who was like precociously young. And that was the whole theme of it. Was that him? Yeah.
He was in that movie Robin Hood Men in Tights in like 1993 or something. Or 93 or 94. Yeah, he was in Time Magazine. Like, he was on the ascendancy. Like,
That's not good. To have that stuff happen to you that early is not a good thing, in my opinion. It's just it's too much.
He started when he was 14. He was like great when he was 17.
Yeah,
like great, like better than pretty much everybody.
Did Eddie Murphy get involved at any point and does he do that kind of stuff?
Eddie intervened. No, Dave was in Nutty Professor in '96. I think, at which point he was 22, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And Eddie said, "Hey, man, I really love your stand-up, and you should write. You should write, because, you've got the mind of a writer. You should try to write movies." And that sort of inspired Dave to think about, what would I... And then that's where kind of Half Baked came out of that.
I had Jeff Ross on the BS Report, which we're running this... the week your movie comes out, so it would have been last week for the podcast, but we were talking about that whole generation of stand-ups that got these movie or TV deals too soon. They, just as they were showing a hint of promise, people would just throw money at them, and they never got really enough time to work on their act.
Yeah,
you're still doing...
including that.
Well, basically everybody from that generation of Jeff's age and a tiny bit younger all of them at some point just had a wad of money thrown at them. Hey, here's a pilot. And
yeah, I mean, you can make the case that it arrested their development, or I think in Dave's case, he kept doing these pilots, and he would get lots of money for them, and none of them would get picked up. So meanwhile, he would have enough money, more than enough money, to live a great life and just hang out in New York and write jokes.
Did that happen to you, or people?
No, because I didn't do stand-up. I didn't start doing stand-up until a couple of years ago. Like that.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought you'd always been doing it.
No, I didn't start till a couple of years ago. That happened to, in some ways, Dave, like getting put on the bench after Half Baked, made him sort of go on the road and just do an hour, and then that's where that first HBO special, Killing Him Softly, came out, which was excellent.
Yeah.
Because he had to develop, kind of like Sarah Silverman, the same. Like Showbiz was a little bit interested, but not really interested. And she had to go sort of off into the wilderness and come up with an hour, and then she got her show, her show's great. Her show's so well written, and it's insane to me.
I used the example of Seinfeld in the '80s, where when I was talking to Ross about this, about how Seinfeld, if it had been a decade later, he would have gone on Letterman 4 times and then gotten some sort of show. But in the '80s. He was on Letterman for 8 years, and he was doing stand-up forever and ever and ever, and then finally got the NBC deal in like 1989 or 1990. He was ready for it.
Yeah, where it kind of it serves you well to kind of get like Romano was the same way. Romano got fired from news radio and got replaced by Joe Rogan, and he just apparently he was like, I don't know. He had 3 kids. He was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep doing this. Like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. And then he did Letterman. He had been doing it for at least 10 to 15 years. And then he did Letterman and got a deal from that.
What made you get into stand-up so late? Because I didn't realize that
Because I was always sort of like just kind of shy or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, you guys go on without me. But I'd be writing tags for people and writing jokes. And then what would happen was whenever I felt like I wasn't getting any sort of traction as a writer, then I'd be like, let me just go, and I'm pretty sure I'm funny. Let me just go make sure. So I sort of got into it in 2002 and did it for like during Chappelle show. So it was not, I couldn't do it consistently. Then when Dave went to Africa, I was like, I don't want to do it because I don't want people yelling about where's Dave. Yeah. Little did I know no one cared, meaning like no one would have bugged me.
Right.
And so then 2 years ago, I was like sort of sick of sitting at home, and I was like, let me just go back into it. And I'm a good enough writer that like my writing's good, and I'm the thing that I need to develop more is like as a performer. So it's good like to really focus on that and go every night and do a couple spots a night out here.
So you do, I've always been fascinated by this whole stand-up comedy scene, especially out here, and knowing a couple of people that do it. It's just, you have dinner with somebody and they're like, all right, I got to go. I got a 10:45 at so-and-so. Like, all right, I'll see you later.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about it is, like, first of all, it gets you out of a lot of social engagements.
Yeah.
Which is great. Like, I haven't had to go to a girl's birthday dinner in a long time.
Perfect.
And then you go. So it's like, it's a great thing to be able to do, like to have dinner or not. Or tonight, for instance, I have an 8:35 in Long Beach at the Laugh Factory. Then I have a 10 o'clock at the Comedy Store. Then I have a 11 o'clock at the Improv. Then I have a 12:20 at the Hollywood Laugh Factory.
I don't know how you do it. Like, we had dinner a few weeks ago, and then you invited me to go with you somewhere, and I thought you were inviting me to a bar.
No.
And I couldn't go, and then they were like, all right. And then near the end, you were like, all right, I got to go do my set. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, we just had dinner. It was like inconceivable to me that you were about to go from a dinner table to an audience.
You're at dinner. Why wouldn't you want to go do stand-up?
I talked myself into it. I'm just saying I couldn't wrap my head around it at the time. I was like, really? You're going to go right? Like, it just seemed strange to me.
What about that was jarring to you, though? The fact
I don't know. I have no idea.
It's a great thing to be able to do, because it's like I'm going to go talk about my penis, women, Iraq,
Right.
and texting.
Yeah.
The 4 things that I care about, and black people. Like, the
It's a
5...
strong 5. It's a strong... What about the Clippers? You're not throwing them in there? The Knicks?
No, I don't care. That
All
means
right.
nothing to me. I want to talk to you about the Clippers, by the way.
Let's do it.
Do you actually believe in sports curses?
I do believe in baggage with sports because I've seen it. Like I saw it with the Patriots, where the whole fan base gets in a rut, and you see the uniforms, and it just brings back bad memories. And even if the Clippers just change their uniform and they change their name, because this has worked for other teams, it just feels like you have a fresh start with stuff. It's like a break from all the other stuff. Blake Griffin just got hurt in Summer League, and all the Clipper fans are like, oh no, here we go, and it's. At some point, you got to break from that, because I do feel like the more bad will or more fear that your fan base has.
Don't you feel like changing your name is just that? Where it's like, who's a famous name changer? Where it's like, yeah, but you're still basically that person. You still look exactly like that douchebag.
Well, I think P. Diddy has done it successfully. I don't even know what his name is now.
He actually has, and we've been, as a culture, we've been very patient with him. And very accepting in a way that I wouldn't. Literally, if my friend did that, I'd be like, I'm not calling you that.
Yeah. And I think Madonna, although she hasn't changed her name, she's changed her look.
Yeah.
She keeps herself fresh. I don't know. I just feel like at some point a team can pass a point where their fans are just going to always be waiting for stuff to go wrong. You could feel it in the crowd. And that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah, but I think Blake Griffin is actually going to be excellent, and I also think I'm not saying he's better. He's bigger than the whatever kind of curse or baggage.
Yeah.
I mean, what did he hurt his shoulder or something?
Hurt his shoulder. He should be fine though. I mean,
that kid's an animal, man.
He's a slight tear of his rotator cuff or something, but he should be fine. But they have a nice with him and Eric Gordon. I think for the first time in a while, they really have 2 blue chippers. We think that the Clipper fans kind of thought that Darius Miles and Quentin Richardson and Elton Brand, and really Elton was the only real blue chipper as it turned out. But I think this time, these are 2 guys you could actually build your team around. So it'll be interesting to see if they fall off a Ferris wheel or something.
Yeah.
Or, they're on a roller coaster at Disney World and it just comes disattached from the tracks. And I don't know what's going to happen.
They have the most movie producers on their team, right?
Yes, I think they do.
Of any NBA team.
It always worries me when the NBA players are dabbling in projects like making movies on the side. It just seems like it's a little complicated.
How is Ron Artest's record label?
I don't think it's doing that
great. They
great.
released the new White Stripes record, right?
Yeah, they're fighting artists all the time, left and right.
Coldplay just signed with Ron Artest.
Yeah, I'm sure all of his family members.
And they're going to sign with what was it? What was the name of it? I Am a Man or something. It was part African, part crazy self-aggrandizement.
It's always trouble when an NBA player is either starting a record company or a movie production company or whatever, and he's like, and here's my president and also my cousin. That's right there that it's over.
Yeah.
And also my cousin who put this together, partially because he knew I'd get a salary.
And that's no good. But these guys, people don't. That's what that's what I respect about McKay and Farrell.
Yeah.
They do what they are good at. They're good at what they do, and they like being good at it. They don't go where people always ask me, are you going to do drama? No. Why would I want to do drama? It really is like Michael Jordan playing baseball. Why would I'm good at comedy. It's not like, I've done so much.
Yeah.
That I think it's time to move. I feel like I've mastered comedy. No one masters comedy. You can occasionally tame it and do it well, but no one is so good that they're like, I'm too good for this genre.
Yeah. Well, ironically, Jeff Ross told a story about how Chappelle was the guy who kind of convinced him to throw himself back into roast. And Chappelle's advice was, you got to stay in your lane.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. I like that.
Absolutely.
Stay in your lane.
Do what you're good at. Jeff Ross is crazy good at those roasts.
Yeah. And
he's great at them.
And for a while, he was in the middle of the decade, it was all right, now what do? I got to... Yeah. And it's no, actually, you should just continue to absolutely crush it at every roast and then do stand-up, because that's what you're good at.
The thing where people go in showbiz. It's you have to be great at every level. Whatever you do, you have to be... I always say that that comedy stardom is like, it's like running for it's like politics in that Eddie Murphy was a great comedian in the clubs when he was 17. Then he got cast on SNL, was great on SNL. So then people go, all right, I want to see this guy in movies. He does 48 hours. He's great in 48 hours. And then you're like, all right, I will pay $10 no matter what this guy does.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people just try to skip the line and like, well, not everyone likes me as a comic, but I'm going to try and throw a Hail Mary in movies. And it's like, dude, you have to create a beachhead at every level, you know?
Well, Eddie got, in the mid-'80s, he had so much success that he started to think that he could sing and direct, and that's kind of became a problem.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. But having said that, and I've talked to you about this, Eddie Murphy, first of all, every time I see him, every time I talk to him, couldn't be nicer, couldn't be more complimentary. Saw him at a Lakers playoff game, like gave me like the half man hug, like a firm half man hug, and was like, "Hey, when's that movie coming out, man? When's your movie coming out?" Like really engaged and excited and remembers. I hadn't seen him for 4 years, and I bumped into him at his trailer was across from my office when I was prepping the movie. The Goods, Live Hard, Sell Hard, August 14th, and he goes, and I saw that his trailer compound was across the way, so I walked over there just thinking I could maybe bump into him, and I see this guy holding up his cell phone trying to get service, and he turns around and it's Eddie, and I was kind of like, oh, that's him, and he sees me and he goes, "What are you doing, Neal?" And I was like, oh, he knows me.
That's
and then
nice.
again, hugged me. How are you? What are you doing? We talked for like 25 minutes. Really nice, really complimentary. Like, he is a comedy fan. Like, Eddie Murphy watches more comedy, stand-up, sketches, sitcoms than anyone I know.
All right, well, this is a long question, so follow me on this.
Yes.
So you got Richard Pryor.
Yes.
Torch gets passed to Eddie Murphy.
Yes.
Torch kind of gets sort of passed to the In Living Color guys, but not really.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of they got to hold it for a while. They didn't officially claim it, but there was nowhere else for it to go. Then it goes to Chris Rock when he does that first HBO special.
Yes.
And his HBO show. Then you and Chappelle grab it.
Yes.
Now you were the only white guy in that whole mix of the I would call it the African American comedy conch.
The conch.
The conch, like Lord of the Flies. The conch gets passed.
Yes, absolutely.
You guys had that conch.
Yeah.
What was the reaction in the African American culture to the fact that one of the two people who created the show and wrote it and all that stuff was a white guy?
I think that they were all pretty. Again, I can only go by Eddie. Could not have been cooler because. We put his brother on in a way that he never really could.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We gave his brother an excellent showcase, and we sort of paid respect to Eddie at the same time. He was always really nice. Chris has always been cool with me. I mean, again, I think it comes down to how much. I think white people were prone to give me too much credit, and black people were prone to give Dave. Not too much, but the benefit of the, you know what I mean? Like 70-30 to Dave. And with white people, it was, again, everyone falls into like, it was all Dave and Neal was this, Jeff Ross once referred to me, and he doesn't know I know this. He once referred to me as Dave Chappelle's typist.
Ah.
Yeah. He doesn't know I know that, and I probably shouldn't have just said that. But whatever. And again, fine, he said that during the half-baked days. Because I was like a scrawny dude, man. Like, no one knew who I was. Now, Jeff Ross saw me do stand-up. We do shows all the time now. When he saw me killing one night and said to someone, how did he do this? Meaning, how did he transform himself from what I thought of as Dave Chappelle's typist to this guy who's a good comedian?
I like this BS Report guest kind of bad blood a little bit. It's kind of fun.
A little bit. It's like a negative sign-in book.
Nice.
No, but again, now Jeff respects me, but he didn't for long. So it's like everyone either was like, Dave was like taking me along for the ride. That's what, and so I think like people that wanted to, in comedy, you're unfunny until proven funny. And I was always considered unfunny, and the only person who knew I was funny for sure was Dave. Because we were very, like, sort of cloistered in terms of writing and all that stuff. So yeah, it was either Dave was, and the other thing was Dave's sort of just Dave would just sort of was all over the place, and I could give him stuff that I could organize him and give him enough ideas, and he was like a vessel for me. And again, neither were true. I think people would be, I don't know, I always saw the thing as really, really closely 50-50, like crazy close, like line for line. You know?
I have to say, you know, I think I'm about as big of a comedy fan as anybody who's not actually doing it.
Right.
And I knew Chappelle the whole time. It's not like I was surprised that he would have a show that was good, but I was kind of stunned by how good it was. I almost didn't know that he had that much talent. I knew he was talented.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that he was going to go to where he did.
You know what's funny? I think we were both, he and I were surprised by how good it was.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like, we knew we had sort of something that we wanted to say. Or, like, it was like almost like 10 years of pent-up ideas and conversations and thoughts and sort of disagreements and arguments that were sort of put into sketch form. But I think I can say for sure we were both shocked by how popular it got. But I think privately we were both like, this was more potent than even either of us could have thought. I think he actually said that at one point, like, wow, this worked out great. Yeah, like we were both kind of, it was really potent. That's one of those things where you just like, you're putting in all these ingredients and you're like, wow, this is delicious.
Like a big stew.
Yeah, no, it was really like, this is better than, it was like like the nuclear bomb or something where you're like, I didn't think it was going to people up that badly.
At what point did you realize that this was going to be a big show? Like as you were filming the episodes, as you had conceived the show, or when it was actually
No, because the pilot actually wasn't, the pilot was, the pilot was almost like there was no studio audience. The idea was like we wanted to be like the anti-standing ovation show.
Yeah. Where
at that point it was like anyone that came out on stage got a standing ovation.
Right.
For whoever it was. Literally it could be like the opener. It would be like anyone on Def Comedy. I mean, there were people it took nothing to get a standing ovation. So we had no studio audience, and the wraparound section was just, I recorded Chappelle on like a, more or less a camcorder, like at restaurants and stuff. And then we watched it, and we had like that Kinko sketch, the Roots sketch, the bloopers from Roots, what else do we have? It wasn't, it was never crazy. I can't remember the exact stage we're on the pilot, but it wasn't like insanely explosive. But it was definitely solid. Yeah. And then we watched it, and it was like there was no laugh track, and we were like, we need proof positive on this show so people know that it's funny. So we're like, we got to do a studio audience. And then once we started taping, they came to Chappelle and they were like, do you want to wear a lav mic, like a hidden mic, or a handheld, like a stand-up mic? And we both were like, stand-up mic, which gave it an extra sort of something, made it like an extra. And then having the playing the sketches live for the audience on those two big screens was also felt kind of novel, although apparently someone reminded me that Robert Townsend did a show called Townsend Television. Where
I don't remember that.
They did like maybe 4 episodes or something. I vaguely remember it. Yeah. Where he did sort of a similar thing where he'd show sketches on a big screen behind him. But he didn't set them up the way Dave set them up, with like a bit of observational comedy or personal and then or personal sort of confession, and then go into a sketch explaining sort of the etymology of the sketch.
Do you, ironically, one of the best things that ever happened to this show from a historical standpoint is that it ended quickly. Like it was almost like the Nirvana thing where you went out at the top of where you could have gone out. Whereas,
yeah, I mean, it was
like
the James Dean, the Beautiful Corpse.
Yeah. I mean, I know ideally you would have just kept doing it and making gobs of money, but if you're just looking at it purely from the historically, how will this be remembered? It's the equivalent of like if Eddie Murphy had gotten hit by a semi-truck right after he released Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think now, I honestly, I don't know what people think of it in terms of like historic. I mean, again, I don't think people think too much like about the history of sketch comedy.
No, but it goes beyond that. It's in the discussion. Talk about
Culturally,
Pryor in the 70s, SNL, Eddie Murphy. I mean, it's in that mix now, I think. Chris Rock.
Yeah, I think the way it ended also made it a bit, it makes it a bit hard to discuss because it's hard to exactly categorize it.
Yeah. Other than weird?
Other than, yes, very, very strange. But yeah, like, I don't know. Again, I'm never part of the discussion. In fact, I never got to, it's such a, doing TV is so difficult that you're working, honestly, it was like 18-hour days, at least. There were days where I'd have to stay up for 2 days straight just to get the sketches ready for the live thing. And we had to do 13 episodes in a row, so there were no reruns, which also is just so punishing, you can't believe it. Which is why we did, like, the 11th episode of the second season, we did just our garbage episode, where we showed sketches that didn't work, not because we thought people would care, but because we didn't have any sketches.
Yeah.
So we had to do that. So I never got to hear, like, when people, I remember someone that worked on the show was like, I was in Vegas this weekend, and someone walked past my table, or they were playing craps, and kept yelling out, "I'm Rick James, bitch." And my first reaction when I heard that was, why would they say that? Like, what does that even mean? And then it became like a big catchphrase, and I still don't know what it means. Like, when someone said, "You look marvelous," it was because they were saying that someone actually looked marvelous. Whereas with "I'm Rick James, bitch," it became this, like, "I'm great" thing.
Yeah.
It became this, like, sort of chest-pounding, it became like a signal for domination.
What did Prince think?
Prince thought it was hilarious. In fact, that's when we knew the show was like, this is huge. I think the show had aired, the Prince episode had aired, then the next week Prince got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and he did a live show, like a classic Prince show where he goes on at 1:30 in the morning at a club in New York, and Questlove from the Roots was like, "You guys should come." So we walked in, and, like, they didn't even ask us for tickets or anything. It was like me, Dave, and Questlove, and they were just like, "Oh yeah, come on in," like through the front. And there were no, like, "Do you guys have passes?" Or it was just like, no, you should be here.
Right.
So we go in. It was like going to the Copa in Goodfellas. So we go in, and in the middle of the show, Prince yelled out, like, "Dave Chappelle, where you be?" Which is like, what? Does he even know you're here? Wow. Like, in the middle of a song. So then afterward, Prince was like, "You should come to my hotel room." So me, Dave, and Questlove go to Prince's hotel room at this opulent hotel, and they let us in, and it's Prince, his wife at the time, who was like half white and half something else. She was from Canada, so it's her and her white family from Canada.
Ooh.
Sitting in, like, this sort of living room of a hotel, and Prince comes out, and they're, like, really square people, like, really square white people, like, not just regular white people, white Canadians, which is really, like, the next level of white.
By the way, Neal, you didn't need to clarify that. Canadian would have sufficed.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Yeah. So Prince comes out wearing, like, golden pajamas.
What?
And golden socks, like matching socks, pajamas, like Nehru jacket pajamas, like sort of like almost like gold leaf. and he's like very nice, and like he was like really super cool and complimentary about the sketch. And he said that Morris Day called him told him to watch it, which is already hilarious.
Oh my God!
Which is exactly how you want it to go down, like them both holding like big opulent phones. Like, boy, you got to watch this. So
no, it'd be better if Jerome was holding the phone for Morris Day.
So Prince is, at the end of the sketch, he said that Prince made pancakes for everybody. So Prince is ordering room service in this hotel room. And he goes, "Do you guys want anything to eat?" And we're like, "No, we're good, man. It's like 3 a.m. And he goes, "Dave, pancakes?"
Oh, a joke from Prince.
Yeah, like a good callback, like a good, solid callback. And then, so we leave at like 4:30 in the morning after hanging out with him and his family, or his in-laws. And he really would, like, disappear. Like, you'd be talking to him, you'd turn for a brief second to your left, and you'd look back to where Prince was, and he'd be gone. Like some sort of spirit, and so we leave. We walk downstairs, and the guys, like the bellman, like hold up a USA Today, and Dave's on the cover. It was just one of these weird, like really was like a making it montage.
Yeah,
like a montage of like, Dave, this is Prince. Prince, how like. And then like spinning USA Today, Chappelle super hit on DVD, and then I remember like we were both sort of so like it's so weird that I remember we just sat in Chappelle's car like in front of my apartment till like 7 a.m.
Yeah,
just like, is this happening? Like, what the hell is happening? And we had to go to work at like 9, but it was like, this is crazy, right?
That's a good story. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, thank you.
Although you never really mentioned how short Prince was, because he's staggeringly short.
Oh, yeah, he's staggeringly short, but, that's all right. I mean, have you seen him live?
I saw him, for some reason, I was at one of the Webby Awards, and he did one song, dropped his guitar, and left. Like,
he is such a good guitarist.
Yes.
That no one talks about it, but it's like, oh, he's the best living guitarist.
Yeah.
Also, he can sing like Prince and write songs and all that stuff. Plays every instrument, complete virtuoso, but he is freaky good at guitar. And that performance at the Super Bowl was staggering.
He's it's pretty amazing to see him in person, just because, especially if you're relatively close, because you don't realize like how short he is, but how, as you said, like the guitar is half his body, but he's amazing with it. Like there's a lot going on.
Yeah, it seems like a complete extension of him.
Yeah.
And he's it's complete mastery. Complete.
So, if
people have a chance, they should go see him.
The first time we hung out together, I gave you my whole theory on why Chappelle walked away from the show.
Right.
And I was saying that.
What was your theory?
Well, I gave you this whole 2-minute convoluted theory about.
Yeah, how do you get rid of the hiccups? Go ahead.
Well, I just said, this guy, he'd hit the highest point. He could see like nothing, no other season that you guys did would be as well received, and you guys hadn't gone into that jump the shark element of the thing where people kind of race to say, oh, it's not good anymore. It's not as good as it was. And
right.
He could kind of see that climate coming, and he just got psyched out and decided to basically run away from it and just get rid of it now. And I presented this whole theory to you, and you were like, no, that's not what happened.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's adorable that everyone tries.
Yeah, thank you.
It's like, let me tell you what your marriage is like.
Yeah.
All right. So no one knows, and the truth is, I can't really talk about it publicly. But it was awful, and we hadn't. What I knew from SNL that once I said during the first season. The beginning of the first season, I said, they're going to say this season's good, next season's great, and the third season we will have dropped off.
Right.
I just knew, because there's this cyclical thing with SNL where, again, it just becomes about a cultural tailwind, where it becomes like, Tina looks like Sarah Palin, So the show's awesome. Meanwhile, the show was great. You know, the show was really good the year before Tina looked like Sarah Palin. Like, you know, I don't know if Seth ever told you this, but Lauren said it was during the strike season. Lauren said, like, that he was as proud of that season as the first season.
Yeah.
You know, like he said it was like a championship season. Like it was, you know, adversity, writer strike, reduced episode, you know, and really, you know, so you and I are some of the few people who probably have watched every episode. And I could tell you some of those Sandler shows were great. Some of them were awful. But I remember people thinking, you know, people go, the cast sucks. Really? So the cast of Mike Myers, Chris Farley, Adam Sandler, and David Spade and Rob Schneider sucks? Is that what you're, because that's what people used to say. They don't remember saying it, but they used to say it constantly.
It was on the cover of, although that really, there was one season, the one that Garofalo was on, that was a very uneven season.
That wasn't truly an abortion. But,
yeah, that was a bad season.
You know, but
before
again,
that, it was good, though.
Yeah, but, like, it was, SNL is I always tell people this, like, SNL is a well-built ship. And as when people go, this show sucks, they can't write anything. I go, all right, well, go ahead and write a sketch. Go ahead and pitch a sketch. Go ahead, because guys like Seth can write circles around people. Just from a dead sleep, Seth could come up with a better sketch than you.
I don't think people realize how hard it is to be creative in a mainstream way. To be creative in a way that, you know, like really funny people could appreciate, but also like average people who don't have that same sensibility could also appreciate. Different ethnic groups, different ages. It's the single hardest thing to do.
Yeah, that's why when people say to me, like, dude, I got this show, it's like what you guys were doing, but like a continuation of that, my eyes just glaze over. Because it's like, I will know when someone has done something akin to Chappelle's show by the look of insanity in their, like by the look of just exhaustion and sort of like almost like possession.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's really, really, really hard. And again, Dave and I had been doing comedy a long time before Chappelle's show. You know, he'd been doing it. He started when he was 14. Chappelle's show didn't hit till he was 30, you know, or 29. So that, you know, going back to your thing of like paying your dues, and developing a voice and developing a sensibility, you know what I mean? Like knowing what is a high level of difficulty joke and a low level of difficulty joke. Like hearing enough jokes. I think a lot of comedians have really good memories. Good comedians, I find, have really good memories. Someone was telling me that Letterman, recently a comedian was on, and that had been going on Letterman for a long time, and the guy did a joke on his Letterman stand-up this year, and Letterman said to someone, you know, he did that joke in 1984 on the show.
Wow.
Like comedians, we remember jokes. So you know, there's something. So when people would pitch me and Dave a joke, we'd go, "Oh, that's like that joke so and so did in 1988," or so we can't do that. Like it's developing like sort of encyclopedic knowledge of existing material, and also figuring out a sensibility that's original. Because you don't know when you first start, you don't know how to be original or what even is original, you know?
Well, I really like that there's a whole code of honor, because that certainly doesn't exist on the internet. But with the comedians, it's a code of honor. If you don't steal somebody else's bit, you don't take their joke. And the people that do or have done it a few times are like just reviled, like child molesters in prison.
Yeah.
You know, there's a couple famous comedians who are famous for doing that, and everybody just loathes them.
Yeah, and they know it.
Yeah.
And it is a little bit of justice.
Yeah.
In a world that's not. I mean, what do you think what do people steal on the internet?
Well, people steal ideas. They still, especially like in sports writing, like they still steal column ideas from other people.
Oh, will they really?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. But I think it's not just sports. It's anything. Well,
yeah, you'll see like
there's a lawlessness.
and whatever.
Yeah, there's a lawlessness, I think, that But I always appreciated that with the comic world. You know, it's funny. When I had Jeff Ross on, I was saying how I didn't feel like I thought maybe he was like the last generation of the stand-ups that did it that way. And now that the way this decade has gone, there's so many different ways that people can get their comic sensibilities out. You know, they can do stuff on YouTube. They can go like the Lonely Island direction. You don't necessarily need to do stand-up to really make an impact potentially comedically. And I didn't feel like there was that same, you know, crop of stand-up guys. I got some emails from people out here that are like, hey, we're out here. You just haven't heard of us, which I thought was interesting. They're right. You know, I wasn't aware of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it takes a while to kind of, you know, it goes back to the thing like, you may hear about the best person from every sort of scene. You know what I mean? There's like the Upright Citizens Brigade scene, which is like begotten Aziz Ansari, who's pretty popular, and he's on that show Parks and Recreation, and this girl Aubrey Plaza is in Parks and Recreation, and she played the love interest in
Funny People,
Funny People, which she loved, and like so they're like from UCB, and then there's people from the, you know, Dane was the most popular guy from the Laugh Factory. There's guys that are the most popular guy at the comedy. There's like Dov Davidoff, Sebastian, Steve Byrne, John Caparulo, guys from the Comedy Store, like guys that sort of people sort of rise from each little fiefdom. And
yes, almost
and
like
that's
gangs.
You end up hearing about.
They're like gangs.
They are
the leader of their little gang.
Yes.
I kind of want to delve into this world. I'm always, I'm hitting 40 in a couple months. I need some new hobbies.
There's a book coming out called "I'm Dying Up Here" about the strike. There was a strike, a labor strike at the Comedy Store in
the 70s.
79.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible book. Terrible title. Almost as bad as The Goods Live Hard, Sell Hard.
Yeah.
But terrible title for what's really, truly an incredible book about a labor strike with comedians, the heroes of which are a guy named Tom Dreesen, who's on Letterman all the time, and Letterman and Leno.
It's amazing.
So
I'd never heard
like
the story until you told me.
Yeah, no, it's like reading a book in which Abe Lincoln and George Washington are both in it.
Yeah.
In terms of comedy, and they're just like both 28-year-olds.
I looked it up. It's coming out, I think, in September.
Okay, good. Yeah. No, that reminds me of a story. Eddie Murphy once told Charlie Murphy that one time at the Comedy Store in the early 80s, Paul Mooney and John Witherspoon jumped Eddie.
What?
Literally wanted to fight him because he ran the light. He did too much time at the Comedy Store. And Charlie looked at Eddie like, John Witherspoon and Paul Mooney. And Eddie goes, yeah, they weren't always old. like they used to be in their 30s,
right.
And they would fight people.
Yeah.
Which is like the funniest.
How did he get out of that?
I don't know. He either fought them or asked them to not fight him, or I don't know.
Eddie's like, hold on, I got to take off my red leather jumpsuit.
Yeah, exactly. No, he was. I think he was probably out here shooting 48 hours, so he wasn't super famous. Like he was just, again at comedy clubs. It is sort of like you go to the wild card gym or whatever that guy's gym is called, and it's like there's Manny Pacquiao and there's the guy with one eye,
right?
And comedy clubs are like that, where it's like there's Eddie Murphy and then there's like some weirdo open micer, Now,
when I saw Funny People, I was excited because I felt like I was going to delve into this world.
Yes.
And what's weird is that these movies that kind of either hint at it or have some of it but not enough of it, like Punchline was like that too. It didn't work out. I don't. Punchline
was like
Funny
really,
People.
really like a McDonald's version of it.
Yeah.
I thought Funny People was certainly the best.
Came the closest.
Version of it so far.
So you had that.
There was a point of Funny People at that point, that part of the movie, I was like, this is so great. The best parts were the sort of offstage conversations between Seth and Adam Sandler, who I thought was excellent in the movie. Because I feel like everything Adam said in terms of, it sort of captured, I think, a actual self-loathing that Adam has and an anger that Adam really has.
Yeah.
like comedians. Adam is a really good comedian and Adam is the kind of guy who, which people may not know, he calls people if he thinks they're really funny and says, "Hey man, I saw your thing. I thought it was really funny."
That's nice.
Like he called Sandberg. He'll call people. He's like a comedy fan, but I think he also is a successful enough comic that when you see people doing it poorly, you do say, it's like when he says to Seth, like, "Do you ever want to get laid after a show? All your jokes are about farting and masturbating."
Yeah.
Like, stuff like that where it's like, I've had that conversation. I'm sure Adam has had that conversation. When he says to Seth, "You're not funny," that's another thing that every comedian I know has said or wanted to say or been said to, like, or thought. So it's like they captured the actual personality of the comedian, where it is this sort of dark, there is this dark anger, but it's also sort of fun at the same time.
Well, code of honor, mainstream directors, comedy people, you're not really allowed to comment on funny people. So I'm going to comment because I'm not part of that group.
Go ahead.
I really wish that had been what the entire movie was about, because I loved the first 70 minutes. I thought it was really good. And then it delves into, I don't want to give it away if you haven't seen it, but it really becomes another movie. And it's like, wait, but I like the movie I was watching. This movie was about Adam Sandler and Seth Rogen and this old school guy who was way too famous and didn't really like himself, and this new guy who wanted to get into that world. That was cool. I liked that movie. And then it just went away.
I mean, someone made a joke, which is they should release, on DVD, they should release it as two different movies, like Grindhouse.
Oh yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, where it truly was two different movies. I mean, but I've heard people, like, certainly women have said that they liked the romantic part better than the comedy part. So,
Well, why hasn't it? It just seems like there should be either a really cool, like, HBO type show set in the whole stand-up world with like 3 stand-ups coming up together. The competitive thing. That would work.
People, in some ways, it's like the old, they don't want to, it's like sausage, it's delicious, but you don't want to know how it's made. I think the best part of stand-up is the material.
Yeah.
Having said that, there was stuff in funny, like when Adam, sleeps with the girl that won't sleep with Seth because she's got a quote-unquote boyfriend, and then Adam just goes, "Okay, I've seen that." Like, that is so excellent and so true. Stuff like that, I think, could be good in a... you watch the first 70 minutes of Funny People and you go, yeah, this is really, really dynamic. And I think for the most part, I think what was interesting about Funny People is the offstage stuff was great, but I didn't think any of the stand-up was that great.
Yeah, that's a common theme in the movies, it seems like. Because that's what killed Punchline. Tom Hanks is like, "This guy's killing it. He's becoming famous." And his material wasn't very good. It's like, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's killing it with that? That's interesting.
I mean, it is a really interesting world. And, like, what is interesting is, like, the long road. Like, it's so long. Show business is so long. I've known Sarah Silverman since I was 15.
Yeah.
I'm 35. I've known David Tell since I was 14. I've known Romano since I was 16. I've known Jeff Ross since I was 18. So Jeff Ross says, Neal Brennan is Dave Chappelle's typist, and then 10 years later he goes, "How did he do this? And I've got a movie coming out that could do great." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's these people that you completely write off, and then 3 years later they're the biggest thing in America.
People you have totally different experiences with as life moves along.
Yeah. It is like this long, it's so long, and there's so many reversals that you're like, wow. Like I always say to Seth, like, I always call when somebody in showbiz does something great, I always yell, "Bird stole the ball." Because It really is like, wow, where did that come from? Right. It seemed to be a foregone conclusion, and then bang, out of nowhere.
If you're an aspiring stand-up, would you do New York or LA, or is there no difference?
I think the New York is you will get a lot of spots. There's a lot of stages there, and there's a lot of possibilities. It will make you sort of a naturally probably more negative comedian.
Because of the audiences.
Because of the audience, because of the compression of New York. Gaffigan had to almost make a concerted effort to not fall into that. Jim Gaffigan, he had to he stopped working at the Comedy Cellar because he said it was to follow my brother, Attell, Colin Quinn, Jim Norton, all these guys that are sort of darker guys.
Yeah.
It was making, then when he went up and talked about Hot Pockets, it just seemed like, what? So he would work different clubs than most people where he could talk about Hot Pockets. And then he started working out here, and then he sort of is on the road more than anything. So now, having said that, L.A. there's less stage time, but I personally, again, I get a lot of stage time out here just because somewhat because of my other stuff I have going on.
Yeah. You could kind of call in and say, I'm coming in tonight at
10:45. I mean, it's
10:45.
not like, hey, everybody off, but like, I think I will, if there's not a lot of spots, but if it's between me and another guy for a 10-minute spot, and I've got a movie coming out and I did Chappelle show and he didn't, they'll probably give me the benefit of the doubt. But I don't I can't bump people. Like, only like Chappelle, Dane Cook, Carlos Mencia,
Robin
Chris
Williams.
Rock, guys like that can just come in and bump people.
I would rather do L.A. because I think the audiences are more laid back, and plus you get sunny weather every day. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, it is a different, it does feel like I would say there's no context out here.
Yeah.
It feels like this culture is like 3 years old. Like, no, we're still making it up.
So you and Chappelle, you on speaking terms or no?
Yeah. I saw him at the Laugh Factory maybe a month ago. Like, I bring him on stage.
Because you didn't talk for a while.
No, we didn't talk for like a couple of years.
Which is painful because he was one of your best friends.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill.
Well, so now you're talking again. That's good.
Yeah, but we don't talk. Now it's like two guys that went to high school together. It's really awkward. I mean, it's like we don't, we talk and it's like, hey, you had a kid? Cool. How's the marriage? But there's sort of a gaping hole where we used to just talk ad nauseum and make plans and stuff. Now it's like, it's just kind of awkward, which we both think is funny.
Yeah.
Like we both see that it's funny. Like, we both acknowledge that, like, oh, this is really hilariously awkward that we had this massive TV show.
Yeah.
You went to Africa. Now we see each other, and it's just awkward,
And what's he working on? Anything?
He's working on his upper body strength. He actually has been working out, and he's built like Dwight Howard now.
What?
I swear to God, it's crazy. Like, he is ripped. And it's not like Joe Piscopo thing. You have to look again where you're like, whoa, where Dwight Howard's just so defined. Dave is kind of like that.
I was going to say,
he's
Joe
not that
Piscopo
big, but it's like that, he's like, it's a little like, it seems out of proportion or something.
Joe Piscopo set the bar for that might not be a good career move for a comic. Just throwing that out there. It didn't work for Joe. I can tell you that much.
It didn't work for Joe. But again, Joe was fighting cancer, wasn't he?
That I don't remember. I just remember him wearing tank tops on the Tonight Show and thinking, this isn't good. People want the Sinatra impression. They don't want a guy showing off his guns.
Yeah. I mean, him singing, them playing that song repeatedly on Howard Stern used to be the greatest.
Yeah.
The Kimberly song?
Last question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because we're way over time here. So explain the movie in 30 seconds. The goods.
Okay, so James Brolin has a car dealership that's kind of going out of business. And there are these guys that are like mercenary car salesmen who you can bring in to blow out your inventory in a weekend. So Piven is one of these guys. It's Piven. He's got a team. It's Piven, Ving Rhames.
Ving Rhames?
Yeah, Ving.
Wow.
Yes. Dave Koechner from Anchorman and this woman, Katherine Hahn, who you'll go like, where do I know her from? She's so funny in the movie, it's crazy.
She was in Step Brothers.
Yes, and How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, apparently, which I never saw. And so they come in to blow out inventory. Jeremy kind of falls for Brolin's daughter, who is dating, who is engaged to Ed Helms, who is in Ed Helms from The Hangover, who was in a boy band, which they call a man band because they're in their 30s.
Yep.
So they have like sort of, that's his rival in the movie. and Dr. Ken plays one of the salesmen at Brolin's dealership. So Piven basically, it's like we got to save the dealership kind of thing. And Farrell and Craig Robinson plays DJ at the dealership, and Will Ferrell plays their friend who died, who we do flashbacks to when he becomes like a bit of an oracle. And
so is the goal.
No,
let's look at a scene right now from The Goods, debuting on August 14th. Yeah. Is the goal for this movie to be a huge hit or to be the best dealership movie since Used Cars?
It's a pretty low budget movie, so I think we're going for just like we'd be happy. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you hope every movie is a huge hit.
You cut off the second part of my question.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. That's about
it was either to be a huge hit or to be the biggest dealership comedy, even bigger than Used Cars with Kurt Russell.
Now, have you seen Used Cars recently?
I remember seeing it once and not really liking it. And this was like when I was 15.
No, it's not a great movie. I got to say, when you've got Jack Warden playing two different parts, which they did.
Yeah, that's not a good idea. I like Jack Warden with one part.
Like we've got Kurt Russell playing one part, Jack Warden playing two.
He's going to double up.
Yeah, it's going to be. We can't lose. It's double the Warden. So yeah, it will be it's definitely the funniest car dealership movie in the history of the 4 car dealership movies.
That's great. The 4 Used Cars fans out there are furious right now.
Oh, they're fun.
They just can't believe this. All right, August 14th, The Goods, directed by Neal Brennan.
To their brother's house to use the internet. August 14th, The Goods. Help me, audience, because you like me, audience. So,
after a 70-minute podcast, I hope they like you.
I hope they better. All right, thanks, buddy.
Thank you for being on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline.
My pleasure.
Talk to you soon.
All right,
bye-bye.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNRadio.com.
Peace out.
This concludes another installment of the BS Report. And with all the talk about sports, Bill Simmons neglected to mention this important just breaking news, which frankly cannot go unstated. This summer, Subway is teaming up with Live Nation to bring you great food and great music for a great value. Right now, buy a Subway $5 footlong and get a Live Nation concert ticket for just $5 to some of the hottest Live Nation shows like Nickelback, The Fray, and Crew Fest 2. Ticket price does not include fees. See the nearest Subway for details.